listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome.
Welcome to Second Wind. I am thrilled that you are here today. It's always a pleasure to know that you're out there listening. And so I am really excited about this show. I'm glad that you're here, so you will get to hear it firsthand today as it's being recorded. And so anyway, I just want to give you a little reminder about Second Wind was created especially for you. I want you, if you're a woman going through transition, that you would have the support that you need to make an easy, happy journey into the new you. And I do that by providing you with the best guests that I can provide you with so that you can become informed. And you will also try to play for a bigger game. There's much more that you can learn about yourself by knowing how big you will go in your life. And that's very important. So through connections and support, I hope to lend you that power so that you can get the life that you really want to live. So let's not hesitate further. Let's learn about our guest today. Leigh Richardson has studied human behavior for over 30 years. Her initial focus was on organizational behavior, then shifted to human behavior in 2003 after her son had a traumatic brain injury. Now, Leigh will share with us, there's another thing that also transitioned her during that life. But moving on, Leigh is the founder of clinical director of the Brain Performance Center, utilizing her MBA and MS degrees, counseling degrees, and board certifications to offer state-of-the-art solutions for brain problems. She is currently taking her PhD in psychology. As a brain health expert, she regularly contributes to radio and television stations across the nation. Whether it is anxiety, ADHD, depression, insomnia, or brain injury, Leigh understands her understanding of the brain and the different methodologies that can be used to organically change the brain is immense. She is unique in that she has the ability to connect with people, understand their situation, and win their trust. Leigh is an author of Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On. Let's do that again. Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On. An international speaker and a popular syndicated radio show host. Leigh, oh my gosh, how do you have time to do all that? I'm in honor. I'm bowing here. If you could see me, I'm bowing.
Well, I used to think I was busy, Joyce. Now I know I'm busy.
I know, but you must really love what you're doing because it shows. Yeah.
I do. And when you love what you do and you enjoy it does make it easier. It really, I love to learn, so I'm inspired. Some days I'm inspired at what I learn, and some days I'm frustrated to learn what I don't know. But in the end, I think I see it really contributing to my personal goals. And you opened the show, welcoming ladies that want to go to the next step in their life and being there to inspire them. And really, that's what the PhD is doing for me. It's taking me to the next step in my life. So I applaud everybody, whatever that next step is. I applaud you for taking it.
Yeah. I'm a much better student now in my midlife than I was when I was younger. It's like it's opened up. Have you always been a good student, or was it just a discovery?
Well, it's so interesting because I have to be honest, Joyce, this PhD program has been hard for me. And at first I was like, okay, I don't get it. I was working for Exxon, worked all day. They came and said, hey, we want you to get your MBA. I'm like, oh, you're going to pay for it? Okay. Got an MBA. Then I've changed careers, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But I was running this business and decided that I wanted to bring counseling in. I had been had a coach certification and had been, utilizing that. So I ran this business during the day, and I went to grad school at night, brought the counseling into the business. No big deal. So, but when I started the PhD program, at first I thought, well, is it because I'm older? And my answer to that is no, it's just harder. It just gives me a great opportunity to work my brain.
Yeah, right. Well, I always like to share with my guests, with my listeners, how you decided to make that turn. I think those are so important because we all have those moments, those transitions in our road, and we take a left or the right. And so would you share with them how that impacted your decisions to expand?
Absolutely. Well, to expand my personal horizons started a long time ago when I actually moved back from Connecticut and came back to Dallas, and I was running my own human resource consulting firm and enjoying it. Was a little overwhelmed because I thought none of my contracts would transfer with me, and they all did, but which is a nice surprise. But by the time we moved back down here, my boys are in the second grade, and I had traveled. I brought them down to Dallas to stay with my mom. I had been on a conference, came through Dallas, picked them up. We flew back into LaGuardia, got to rent a car, had such a good time driving back to Connecticut. Found a great radio station with singing, just, a great memory. So we drive into Danbury, and I tell the boys, the van's parked at the bagel shop. I'm going to go in, I'm going to get you a bagel and a juice. I'm going to put you in the van. Then I'm going to go across the street and turn the rent car in. All you have to do is eat your bagel and wait. Okay. Okay. So they used to go to the rent car place a lot because my husband traveled a lot. And they decided, oh my gosh, we got to show her the secret path that we can take to get to the rent-a-car place. So as they were crossing the street, one of them got hit by the car. I'll never forget looking back in my rearview mirror and seeing him roll up on the hood of a car and land in the street. And then I'll never forget seeing the look on the other one's face. So honestly, we were blessed. We were very blessed. We went to the ER, and then they said he never lost consciousness. And basically they said he's had a concussion. If you go home and this doesn't happen and this doesn't happen, all good. So we went home, and that didn't happen and that didn't happen. So we thought we were all good. Fifth grade rolls around. He comes to me and he said, Mom, you got to help me. And I'm like, well, of course I'm going to help you. What's up? He's like, no, Mom, you got to help me with my brain. And I said, well, okay, what's going on with your brain? And he said, it's not working anymore. It just won't work. And I said, wait a minute. So he walks me through it. And he had been online, and he said, I know what's wrong. And I said, well, tell me. He said, well, I have ADHD. And I said, well, I don't know what that is. And he really didn't know either. He just said, I know I can't remember things and I can't focus. And you got to help me. I said, I got it. So I go up to the middle school and where he's going to school, and I meet with the counselor and I explain this. And she's like, oh, your kid doesn't have ADHD. Your kid's never been a behavior problem. He's never failed anything. Your kid's lazy. And I said, well, okay. But my kid wants help. What can I do? We'll put him on Ritalin. You want me to give my kid speed, but then you tell me there's nothing wrong with him. Why would I do that?
Right.
And she's like, well, that's the only thing you can do. So that's a long answer to why did I start doing what I do? And I saw improvement with him. I've been in ICU twice with brain injuries. The first time they were about 1 year old, and I fell down a flight of stairs. basement stairs in Connecticut.
Oh.
Woke up in the hospital, had no idea where I was. My husband was sitting there looking at me and he said, "Do you know where you are?" And I said, "Nope. Are you going to tell me?" And I really had completely lost consciousness. And they told me that you've had a pretty substantial concussion. As a result, you've lost your sense of smell. I'm like, okay, sense of smell. I mean, I have to be able to see. I have 2 little kids. I have to be able to hear. Sense of smell. Cool. I'm good. And that really played out very differently. Did you know you have more emotional memory tied to your sense of smell than any other sense? And when you
No.
think about it, when you think back on Thanksgiving, I can't tell you who sat where. I can't tell you what they wore, but I can tell you what I smelt when I walked in that house.
Oh, there is something about that. And the cookies and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I thought, I'm driving over here twice a week. I wonder if this can help me. So I asked the neurologist and he's like, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, let's try it." And it did. It got my sense of smell back. And that was a life-changing moment for me. That's when I decided, you know what? This is really cool stuff. I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. He was walking down the hall one day and I was in a treatment room. Dr. Walker, come on in. I got something to tell you. And he's like, okay. And he comes in and said, "Well, here's the deal. I've researched it all. I'm going to go up to UNT. I'm going to do my didactic training. Then I'm going to come back down here and I'm going to do an internship with you, right?" And he's kind of like, "Right." "And then I'm going to get board certified." And I said, "If you're lucky, I just might work for you." And he was like, "Okay." And that's exactly the way it rolled out. And I worked for him for 5 years before opening my own practice.
All right. So the treatment that you went through was biofeedback?
Well, it was neurofeedback,
Excuse me. Yes.
but neurofeedback is biofeedback with brainwaves. So it's
Okay.
just another way of saying it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a very basic question here. What does that treatment look like? I mean, if I come to your office as a client, how do you put an apparatus on my head? What is it? Is it ear hearing? How does it work?
Well, the first thing that we have to do is understand what's going on in your brain. And
Okay.
so we'll map the brain 2 ways.
Okay.
First, we'll do a qualitative EEG. We'll put a cap on your head, and that cap's got little built-in sensors, and we'll record 20 minutes worth of data or more if we need it. But typically 10 minutes eyes open and 10 minutes eyes closed gives us the data that we need. From that, we'll get at least 1 good minute, and that's kind of like the gold standard. And that lets us look at what's going on in the brain.
Yeah. So that's how you get your information to work with.
That's how we start.
That's how you start. Yes. Well, okay. So it was seeing the results that you had, the benefit of smell returning, that gave you that positive drive to move forward. You knew there was something to this.
Well, it inspired me, and seeing my kid, when you see your kid, and I told him when he first came to me, I said, "Look, because I have twin boys, and
I
one
was
is
wondering if they were twins.
they were, and one is very, very book smart, and the other was very intuitive smart." And I said, "You don't have to make straight A's. You just need to be secure and happy." And he wasn't. And one of the first changes I saw in him with the neurofeedback was he started to get his self-confidence back. And I'm like, that motivated me, because to see your child lose their self-confidence, and think about it, Joyce. I mean, all the education I've had, I've never had a course in self-confidence or self-esteem.
Right.
It comes from within.
Yeah.
And to see him get that back was just, it was a motivator.
Did you see him lose that after his accident, or was he always a child that had less confidence?
No, I saw him, actually, he was fine till he got to 5th grade. And
Really?
his brain quit working.
Okay.
And then,
Then they get lots of messages.
they do get lots of messages. And,
Yeah.
and at first, when I look back, I'm like, well, fifth grade's a really hard year. And he was like, no, Mom, don't try that with me. My brain's not working. I'm like, okay. Uh,
He sounds like a pretty smart kid.
he is a smart kid. And he was smart enough to figure out what was wrong with himself.
Yeah.
And I give him a lot of credit.
Yes. I mean, I'm amazed you're telling me this. So you decided just how many months or years ago did you decide to go into psychology, to get the psychology degree? Because you're a busy lady, and then you decided, well, I really need this, or what was the
Well, it's really been an evolution. I've thought about doing the PhD for a while, but I don't want to write prescriptions. I really don't want to just do assessments. So I kept asking myself, what would that PhD give me that I don't already have?
Right.
And because, that MBA still resonates, it's back there somewhere. What's my return on the investment going to be? And my personal and my professional plans have really evolved. I want to create more of a social change around mental health. Mental health is brain health. And Joyce, did you know 60% of the people that suffer from mental health issues do not get treatment?
And
And
is that because of the stigmatism toward?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And get this, do you know how long they suffer with mental health issues? Those that do something before they do it? Do you think, no, 3 to 6 months, a year, 3 to 5 years, 10 years, a decade? That is a long time to be hurting.
It really is. I have a friend who has a child that has several conditions, and I kind of have gone through that. She's a very active member of NAMI, which is a support group for schizophrenic and all the other blends of therapy. But she's talked about that with me. There really is this, I don't want to be labeled mentality that goes around it, particularly if you're not. I guess it really goes through all society. I was starting to say maybe it was if you were raised in the country, but it's not. It's everywhere, isn't it?
It is. And where a lot of that stigma comes from? It's the self-blaming that we do it to ourselves,
Yeah.
because, and Joyce, that's why I wrote the book, Turn Your Brain On to Get Your Game On. First thing I do for anyone that comes to the Brain Performance Center, I do a 30-minute complimentary consultation, because if I'm going to tell you that I can help you, I've got to believe it. And how do I know if I can help you until I talk to you? Right. And what I noticed in those consultations, and from the very beginning, I would say, gee, sounds like you've got some depression going on. And I'd see him look at the floor. Oh, no. Or I'm like, gee, sounds like he has some anxiety. And I'd see those shoulders come up and earrings. Oh, no, not me. And I'd be like, it's okay to not be okay, because everybody is going to not be okay at some point in their life. And I realized that, people need to know that. And that's why I wrote that book, is just to introduce, hey, you have depression, you have anxiety, you can't sleep, you think about the same thing over and over and over. All of that is what's going on in your brain.
What is the most difficult, once you diagnose or you assume that you have the right diagnosis for someone, how difficult is it to convince them, to encourage them? Do they go willingly just because they have an answer, or is it more of a selling type of situation?
Well, it's actually, Joyce, once they get here, it's easy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It is so easy, because the way that number one, the way that they're treated, number two, the way that they're given the information, it validates. When I look at a brain map, I'll say, oh, this looks like to me that this could be going on in your brain. Do you have any, this could be happening? They're like, yeah. I mean, when you have a little 8-year-old say, Miss Leigh, give me that. And I'm like, give you the brain map? Yes. And I'm looking at mine like, and she's like, okay. And I was like, okay, buddy. I said, what are you going to do with that? I said, are you going to put that on the refrigerator? Oh, no. I have a special spot. I put everything that's really special. It's going in there. He said, but I'm not telling you where it is. I said, well, that's okay. You don't have to tell me where it is. But I mean, when you see, and I see that same response from people of all ages, but I'll never forget the look on that face. Miss Leigh, give me that. I'm like, okay.
It's my brain.
Yeah.
However it is. So are we making any progress in changing the stigma around brain issues?
Well, on some levels we are. I mean, there's 3 levels of stigma. 1 comes from within, that's self-blame. 2 comes from society. And, and that's a big issue. And the 3rd level comes more from a workplace, where we work. And that's where I'm trying to create some social change, because employers need to understand. I mean, Joyce, if you hurt your leg, what's the first thing you do?
Go to the doctor.
Absolutely. If you get up and you feel like you're just so overwhelmed that you just can't do it today, you don't think I need to go to the doctor. You start having these nasty conversations with yourself. Okay, suck it up, buttercup. Let's go. Power through. You got to do this. And that dialogue has got to change. Right. And the way that dialogue can change, number 1, is for people to have the same type of insurance for their mental health as they do for their physical health. And sometimes they have that type of insurance, but they don't know it. There's a lot of companies that have EAPs, but it's undercommunicated. And, it's not, and when we hear that, well, I don't need that. I'll never need that. Right. One rule I have in life: never say never, because it'll bite you. But I think, people need to understand that it's okay to not be okay. That, and if they go to their supervisor and they say, I'm just having a really hard time in my family right now, I just need to have a mental health day. Just being able to say those words would be such a drastic shift. And, that's my hope, that it would, and I think the pandemic has taught us a couple of things. And one of the things I think we've all learned is that we've all been impacted in a way we've never been impacted by the stress.
Oh, yeah, really.
And I think
isolation is big. Isolation is huge.
I can't imagine the studies that are going to come out and show the psychological impact of the quarantine. Think about it. Being isolated, you're taken away from your community. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't go to church. They're just things that are part of my community, from my existence. People couldn't go to the office. They couldn't go to work. I mean, I was shut down for 5 weeks because of I needed to be. Right. But you lose all of that. And I think that what you realize is how important taking care of yourself is. I hope.
Yeah. I think we're seeing signs. I mean, just the simple thing that happened at the Academy Awards, the unpleasant outbreak by this movie actor. It just, we've never seen things like that before. I mean, they're all kind of like acts of violence. They're kind of like, who are we angry at that we had to break out into physical or verbal abuse of other individuals? It's just really the strangest time.
Well, I agree with you, but what happens is, there's 4 things that puts a brain into a dysregulated state. Yeah. 1 is genetics, 1 is physical head trauma, 3rd is emotional trauma, and the 4th is stress. Well, for people in that movie industry, the emotional trauma. I mean, they're not filming people. And when they do film, people won't go to the movies.
Right,
And the
that's true.
stress of all of that, that
Yes.
impacts the way the brain can work. And that also impacts that autonomic nervous system, and that autonomic nervous system keeps you in balance between fight, flight, and freeze.
Yes.
And I think when I hear about what happened and I watched it, that autonomic nervous system just went into that fight or flight stage and just chose fight, and you can fight with words. There's a lot of different ways you can fight.
Right. Well, I can't help but believe, because of the coaching background that I've had in my own personal work, that almost any one of us would grow up from our home environment as a young child. And you can think, even in the best environment, there's always the smarter sister or the bigger brother or the more popular person in your family. So this starts really early in your life, this programming that you get. And um, so wouldn't it be, am I overstating to say almost any of us would have some balancing that we need to do to the brain?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody, and I say this every day in every consultations,
Mhm.
everybody is going to have emotional trauma. I don't
Right.
wish it on you, but if you're living life, you're
Mhm.
going to have it.
Mhm.
And, everybody needs to rebalance. And my hope and my goal is that everybody recognizes they can, for starters.
Oh,
And
yeah.
not only can they, but they should. And,
Mhm.
I try to stay away from the shoulds,
Yeah.
but in this case,
There are
I
some good
think,
ones.
thank you. There are some good shoulds.
Yes. Well, I think as I have become more familiar with the brain, and we seem to be talking about the brain more than we used to, we just kind of ignored that muscle that's up there in our head, you know. And so it seems to be, we think, the brain's connected to your gut system, and you've got all that conversation going on with our diet. And I like that we're starting to at least recognize the whole person. It's every part of us. And I don't know why the brain has come up last, but it has. It's like kind of seems that way to me.
No,
Not
you're
for you.
right. I mean, there's been more work done in the neuroscience world in the last 15 years than all the rest of the time. And,
Yeah.
and I think it's just we've all been so focused on our physical health,
Hmm.
not even understanding. I mean, if the body and the brain aren't communicating on a cellular level, nothing's going to work.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly our food, so many people, I mean, the fast food places are booming. And because I have of late, within the last 6 months to a year, really tried to start working on that part of my life. It's just I keep looking at those lines. It's right next to the grocery store. So I'm going to grocery store to get my wonderful salad mixes that are in a bag. I love those things. They're so convenient. But as I'm in there shopping, I go out and I just see this long line. That's how we live. Lunch is always fast food.
It is,
Yeah.
or leftovers in my case. But,
Yes.
and you make such a good point, because it is how we live. We live in this instantaneous moment. We've got to have immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And when you were talking earlier about, all this programming starts early. When you have a smarter sister,
Mhm.
or the neighbor next door wins every single thing, it
Mhm.
starts. And think about what social media is
Oh,
doing to that programming, because I did a radio interview yesterday about all these young adolescent girls are showing up in the emergency rooms having tics and like Tourette's after watching so much TikTok. They're watching TikTok
really?
videos on Tourette's. And
Oh,
it's I mean, so I'm not saying social media is awful. I think a little bit of social media is fabulous,
Right.
but I think too much of it. And, all you have to do is, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, all you have to do is spend a fair amount of time looking at something, and you're
Right.
on their roadmap.
Yeah. I've become aware lately of the importance of the sleep for the brain. I and with the stress that's come up, nobody I talk to sleeps through the night. And I'm primarily hanging out with 50, 60, 70-year-old women, and they're all waking up to do whatever they need to do. And I think it is stress. I think part of it is stress. I think there's many reasons, but it impacts the brain.
It really does. And it's so interesting because all day long, those neurons and dendrites, they're wiring and firing away. And when
Uh-huh.
they're doing that, they're creating toxic waste. And
Oh,
which is okay, because when you go to sleep at night, you have these little glial cells that come out and they clean up that mess. They're little scrubbing bubbles and they just clean it all up. Well,
yeah.
if you don't go to sleep, when are they coming out? And more
That's
research is
interesting.
linking insomnia with Alzheimer's disease.
Oh.
So, we need to be aware of how important our sleep is. And I
Mhm.
think we'll wake up and maybe we're overthinking something. Maybe or maybe 80% of us, and I got this from one of my favorite spots, Harvard Health,
Uh-huh.
says 80% of us are either lost in the past or we're worried about the future. We
Let's
just
see.
need to learn to stay present, to stay in the moment.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. There's also been a crease. How does the CPAP machine affect our brains? Because that's been huge. Everybody I know has got one of those things.
Well, that's a really good question. It certainly changes the biology, what's going on in the brain on a neurobiological level. I don't know how it does. I know that it regulates your breathing,
Mhm.
but to me, anytime you alter your chemistry, and whether it's with a CPAP machine or an Ambien
Mhm.
or a sleepy time tea, I mean, there's all
Mhm.
different ways to come at it.
Right.
But what we're trying to do is change what's going on so that we can go to sleep. And I think the best advice that anybody can do is, if you wake up in the middle of the night, and some
Mhm.
people like to go to prayer, some
Yeah.
people, people have different places they go. But what I suggest to people is, when you wake up in the middle of the night, stop and focus on your breathing. Just
Oh.
focus on
Mhm.
taking put your hand on your belly. And
Mhm.
when you're taking a long, slow inhale, you should feel that. You should feel something out around your belly button. You should feel that stomach go up, because you're pushing air down in there.
Yes.
And then take an even longer, slower exhale. Because when you change your breath rate, you change your heart rate. And if you can get your heart rate and your breath rate to dance together,
Mhm.
well, then you've created heart rate variability. And that's a sign of
Mhm.
wellness.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Next time I wake up, I'll try that breathing technique for sure. Now, I've heard other warnings, and yet I use something myself. There's an app that when I wake up, it has all sorts of settings for meditation. It also tracks my sleep, my deep sleep,
Mhm.
and I love to use it, but I've also heard it's not good to have the phone next to your bed. Is that true?
Well, it's the blue light that the phone puts out.
Oh, okay.
So that's what's not good. So I think that if that app brings you peace and provides you some coping skills, use
Mhm,
it. Just
mhm.
turn the face down. Don't look at the blue light.
Yeah, I wear goggles anyway because of my CPAP machine. I look like a warrior when I go to sleep.
That's
I
okay
am
as
a
you want,
warrior.
as long as you wake up and you won the battle.
Yes, that's true. But it's like a game. I wake up in the morning and it tells me if I snored or not, and it tells me when I was in deep sleep and awake and how many times I woke up, because my pulmonary doctor is telling me you got to use this thing. But they're making great strides with it, so you don't have to use the breathing machine. So I don't know about those yet, but they are changing the use of that, and that would be good, because there are also issues with that machine.
Well, technology, I mean, when I did neurofeedback back in 2004, it was they put two sensors on your head. Now we do whole brain training. We train the networks and the hubs. We train the power. We train the coherence. We train the phase. I mean, so technology has come a long way. So don't give up on those machines.
Okay. But how does somebody work with you when they come in? You identify their issues. I mean, is it do they come in once a week, or can they be treated from distance, or
Well,
any of those?
the thing about what we do here,
Yeah.
we do cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's psychotherapy, and that can be done in a Zoom meeting. But what we do with the biofeedback, the bioresonance therapy, creating the communication between the brain and the body, that's got to be done here. What we do working with the brain, whether it's creating neuroplasticity in the brain, or changing the power ratios, or changing the way the brain shares information, or the timing, that's got to be done here. And I always say when I talk to people, now here's the kicker. The kicker is you got to show up on a regular basis.
You got to go to Dallas.
You got to come to Dallas, or, but you need it for research supports for best results. You do it twice a week.
Oh, okay. And is that after you map the brain, then do you use a cap or something over your head to get the training, or whatever?
You do, no matter what we're doing. If we're doing a lens, which is focused on neuroplasticity, we're moving a sensor around, a very small sensor around your head. If we're doing neuromodulation, if we're sending the brain what we know it needs, we'll use some coils that send out pulsed electromagnetic frequencies, or some sensors that can do transcranial alternating current or direct current. If we're doing neurofeedback, we're training the networks and the hubs, you're putting that cap back on your head. So you're always, we're using something to sense what's going on in the brain, or to modulate what's going on in the brain.
Right. Yeah. Now, is your clinic unique for this, or are they becoming more prevalent all over the United States and world?
I am really happy to say I think that the field is growing, and I think what has brought some of that growth is that the medical profession has begun to open their heart to what we do. And the medical profession, they've been trained in pharmacology. Up until recent years now, we've got integrative medicine, we've got functional medicine. We're looking at things differently. And there are people that do it. There's all kinds of ways that they do it. And I always just say there's all kinds of just gimmicks out there. Just be sure that whatever technology or whatever theory you apply has science behind it. And be sure that anybody you're working with, even if it's an MD, they need to be board certified in neurofeedback, because to keep that board certification, just like to keep that counseling license, you got to get those hours of training in.
Yes.
Technology changes so fast. If you haven't been trained in the last 5 years, your history.
Yeah, you're behind.
Yep.
That's true. Sort of like the computer. It just keeps changing.
Yep. For the good, they say.
Yeah, it's a challenge for me, but I'm going, okay. Well, you have provided us with so much good information today. It's just, and I could talk to you for another hour, but I guess we have to go. But I always like to ask two questions of my guests. So the first question, may I ask you questions?
Of course.
That's three questions now. But anyway, what was the most important action that you took as you made your transition? The transition either from your son's accident or your own cases.
Well, I think that that action started for, personal reasons.
Mhm.
And then it kind of grew as I saw how it impacted a lot of other people in the world. And it's really evolved. And, I think the action that I've taken in the last couple of years to go back and to get that PhD, because then I can be heard on a different level. And my personal goal is to create social change around mental health. To make it, people say,
great goal.
yeah, I've been depressed. Yeah, I've been anxious, but I'm working on it. I'm trying some meditation. I'm trying, so to me, that's really the greatest action I've taken.
Mhm. Yeah. There is a story there. I think that we are drawn to what we really love to do, and that's a sign. That's where we need to be. And I've tried to go the other route, and it's much harder when you're not having a good time. So, the second question is, what is your greatest success?
Well, I think my greatest success, really, it's not one individual. I mean, a couple of people came to mind that, after being in the hospital for 2 years, but it's not any one person. It's the cumulative effect of knowing that someone that wakes up every morning with anxiety and they're losing their job because they can't go to work, that can be changed. And knowing
Right.
that somebody that is so depressed, that they're so fatigued, they socially isolate, they haven't seen their family in weeks, knowing how that hurts them, and knowing that too
Mhm.
can be changed.
Oh,
And change without medication, without, it's organic change.
mhm.
So to me, just seeing that success thousands of times, the accumulation of that is my greatest success.
And did you share with me you'd had so many clients you'd seen? It was a huge number.
Oh,
No. Yeah.
all I know is I'm looking at some data for my
Yeah.
dissertation, and there's thousands.
Yes. That's pretty impressive to know you've affected that many lives.
Well, the Brain Performance Center has. I can't say
Ah.
that. I can't say that one just Leigh.
Well, I know, but if Leigh hadn't decided to do that and build that, then it wouldn't have happened. So I'm going to give you some credit, Leigh.
Well, and you know what? I'm going to take it. Thank you.
Good, good. Well, thank you very much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Joyce.
Yes. Now, listeners, I really want you to think about this. You've heard really good information. If you want more, you could call Leigh's office. Oh, and we need to do all that. We need to give them your call number, your social media, and all of that to help them find you, Leigh. I'm sorry, I missed some things here.
Well, we're easy to find. We are the Brain Performance Center.com.
Mhm.
We're on Facebook, Brain Performance Center. We're on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. We even have a YouTube channel. So if you want to learn more about the Brain Performance Center, go to YouTube.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. And you also offer, you mentioned this earlier, but I want to mention it again, the free 30-minute consultation. And
We do.
and you can, no, you can't. Can you do that from the phone by calling?
Absolutely.
Yes.
you can. Pre-pandemic, nobody wanted to, but now we've kind of changed the way we do business. You can
Yes.
do that. We can do that over Zoom. We can do it over the phone. We've learned that we can operate differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that. I think using Zoom has definitely cut down on those travel trips that could be handled through the computer world. So I agree with that. But for you listening out there, I really want you to maybe look for the book. If you already know that this is the direction that you feel you need to go, then that consultation is waiting for you to call 214-329-9017. And I'm sure you can go to her website, www.ps thebrainperformancecenter.com, and get that number right. That's on your website for sure. So I always ask you to do something that during the week and tomorrow, remember to share this with your friend that is having brain issues or just complicated life. Share with her that there's hope, there's help, and it's very close. It's just pick up the phone or go to the computer and begin the process. Take action. You have the ability to change somebody's life, and that life could be yours. So I really, really, really encourage you, as always, to take action, help your friend or help yourself. The next thing is that I really look forward to you being here next week, because it gives me great pleasure in knowing that you're listening. Have a great week. Thank you for being here today. Bye.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.